really encourages me, because the message that I want to convey today as we talk about sleep and self-care is how important it is to take care of our health as human beings, and maybe especially as students. So the underlying theme here is that health isn't a nice to have, that especially to be a successful student, being healthy, feeling healthy, those are actually necessary. They're not just nice to have. And I really wish that my undergraduate student self could hear this talk, because I needed to hear this. Protecting time to tend our health isn't just for weekends, holidays, or graduation. And yet, when you're caught up in the busyness of all of the to-do lists of being a student, it can be really hard to prioritize. I was actually not too bad at getting enough sleep when I was doing my undergrad, but I really didn't have a practice of self-care to speak of at all. And I paid the price. I would get really tired and burned out, and I would push through, and then at the end of every semester, I would inevitably come down with a really bad cold, as if my body was just saying, oh, finally, I get to rest. And so I really just want to encourage you to consider that actually right here and now, in the throes of assignments and the work, life, school juggle, this is the ideal moment to deepen our own health promoting practices. So even just by being here today, you're showing me that you're making some time to think about that, which is great. Lisa, if you could move to the next slide, please. Great. So with all of that said, and with me already having disclosed that I have personally had lots of obstacles to putting my health first, I'm wondering, what are your obstacles to fitting in rest, sleep, self-care, maybe all of the above? Feel free to annotate, as Lisa was saying. So by clicking on view options and then the annotate button. What gets in the way of you getting the sleep or the rest that you need? So many different demands on my time. Yes. Feeling guilty about productivity goals, too busy at work, general anxiety, and therefore proper management, the lack of proper management. Good correction there. Yeah. Trauma management-ish. Yeah, so that could be past trauma. It could be present experiences that are traumatic. All of those can definitely interrupt our ability to focus on the tasks at hand and to prioritize the things that we need to do. Procrastination cycle. I see a check mark there. Yeah. If we're caught in a procrastination cycle, then especially like the closer we get to midterms or assignments being due, often that's when we see students really cutting out time for rest and sleep. And ADHD, so that could be a factor for some people. Yeah. Feeling guilty about napping instead of studying. I see a lot about kind of guilt. Yeah, feeling like maybe I shouldn't be sleeping or resting. Really interesting. Thank you. We've got a broad array of obstacles that can get in the way of us, and especially for students, getting the sleep and the rest that we need. Finding excuses not to do these things. So you might know that it's a good idea to get the sleep you need or to rest, but maybe finding some excuses. I'm not feeling like it, or wanting to watch another show or play more of whatever game you've been playing lately. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you for helping to set the stage. I think I'm sure a lot of you can relate to folks' different comments here. We'll clear the drawings. And Lisa, if you could move the slide forward, please. Great. So I guess especially to address the guilt around sleep, I want to give you a reframe to consider that sleep is actually a learning strategy. So not only is it necessary for our physical health and for us to have energy, but it will help you to learn better. So I'm just going to pull some notes up over here with a little bit more detail than what's on the slide. So as you may know, there are three main phases of sleep. So we have light sleep. Most of that happens at the end of the sleep cycle. And during light sleep, you're clearing away things that happen throughout the day so that you can make room for more information the next day. Then you have deep sleep, and that's the most restorative sleep of the night. It typically starts about 35 to 45 minutes after first falling asleep. It's really instrumental in helping us to store and recall information. During the course of the day, our hippocampus stores new information learned, and during deep sleep, we organize and store this information in our long-term memory. So as you can imagine, if you're trying to learn things as a student, you need that process to happen. You need the things that you've been learning throughout the day to then move to long-term memory so you can access them when you're writing your midterm or your exam. So when we delay going to sleep, we miss on this essential function of deep sleep and lose out on the benefits that we could have on our studying, writing, and learning. And lastly, we have REM. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and its first cycle starts about 90 minutes after falling asleep. And it only lasts for 10 minutes that time. And then later in the night, REM sleep lengthens, with the final REM cycle lasting up to an hour. So as you may well know, REM sleep is when we dream, and dreaming actually can be really beneficial for our learning. It can lead to creative breakthroughs and inspirations, offer insight and solutions to problems, and can increase our ability to make sense of feelings and experiences. So I guess I just want to sort of put that to you as, if you do struggle with saying, oh, I can't let myself sleep as much because I have so much else to do, but actually thinking about building in the sleep you need as a way of helping yourself to function better when you are approaching your schoolwork. And I'd love to hear if that's a different way of thinking about things. Feel free to pop that in the chat. We'll move on to the next slide, Lisa. So I'd like to check in about the amount of sleep. So I'm wondering on the first section, how many hours of sleep you need to feel at your best during the following day. You can choose a stamp. Okay, good. Yeah, I see you've figured that out. Can indicate how many hours you think you need to feel at your best the following day. Seeing a lot around 8, and then 9, or even closer to 10, maybe question mark, maybe 6. And then as you can see, plus a nap. Okay, yeah, and so some people will approach sleep differently in that regard. So then think about the last 2 weeks and reflect on how many hours of sleep you've been getting per night over the past 2 weeks, and see how that compares. We often know how much we really need, but it can be challenging to fit it in. So I see we're leaning a little bit more towards 7, but see some people maybe even sleeping a little bit more than they were. Okay, so just sort of reflecting on that and how your current amount of sleep is comparing to what you know you need to function really well. And Lisa, we'll move to the next slide, please. I can clear it. Oh, you've done it. She's on the ball. Great. And then one of the issues that I often hear students talking to me about is the challenge of falling asleep. How long do you think it should take to fall asleep at night in minutes? Between 15 and 20, between 25 and 30. And then you can think about how long does it typically take you to fall asleep at night in minutes on the lower part of the screen. So some are a little bit longer, more like 45, 10, 15, 20? Okay, great. Well, I think, oh yeah, maybe 35, maybe 10 minutes. So yeah, we've got a range, and someone's saying 55 or more. I've definitely had times in my life where it's been like that, and I can relate to how challenging that can feel. Great. So again, just sort of checking in about what's going on for you, and we'll move to the next slide, Lisa. And I get the sense that this might not be as much of a surprise to the group as it was to me. When I learned through the Thriving in Action Training Institute that the average person takes 30 minutes to fall asleep, I was actually surprised, because I often will take probably close to that, maybe even a little bit longer. And I thought that that was a sign that there could be a bit of a problem with my sleep. So I found this really reassuring to know, oh, that's actually really quite average to take some time to go from the waking state to the sleeping state. And Lisa, I think you also...
I was saying I always was upset with my husband because as soon as his head hit the pillow, he was asleep. And I was like, how does he do that? But I read recently on a sleep tracker that if you are asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, it's actually a sign that you're overtired. It should take about, at least 10 minutes, if not 30. And so I always, reframe that now, like, oh, look at him so overtired. And I'm the healthy one that takes 15 minutes. So, but I think it was a really good reframe, and good to learn that.
Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. And yeah, I also think that just knowing that the falling asleep process can naturally take some time. Ideally, we can stand to build in a little bit of time for the falling asleep to happen, so that we can still get the ideal amount of sleep as much as possible. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. Great. This is another whiteboard activity. So, and it's a list of factors that might be getting in the way of a good sleep, sleep interferences. So it could be in the way of substances. So alcohol, marijuana, cigarettes, cold medications, caffeine, including coffee, tea, chocolate, soda, emotional state, stress, anxiety, anger, frustration. Vigorous exercise too close to bedtime can be problematic for some people in terms of getting too much endorphins and adrenaline flowing in the system. I see a lot of alertness stickers coming up here. So reading on your computer or phone, being disturbed by notifications on your phone or device, studying in bed, which might be happening a bit more than it used to, just with the reality of learning from home, developing to-do lists, ruminating about sleep. And then environment is important to think about. The room temperature, is it too hot or too cold? Is the room too messy or disorganized? Or maybe not having separation from rest and workspace. I see a few people indicating that, and that too, I think with doing so much from home these days, that's a really real issue. So I'm wondering if anyone has any sort of reflections or comments that they want to share about what it's like to see this list, and if there's anything that they've noticed about either what helps to foster sleep, or something that they're thinking about that they might want to do. Feel free to turn your mics on if you feel like it. We could pop it in the chat. Okay, I'll move on, but feel free. Yeah, so let's see. Oh, I find calming music helpful to fall asleep. Let's see, go to sleep in a random location in my house. Ah, okay. Yeah, and a calming music can really help to fall asleep. Podcasts help. That's great. Thanks for sharing. You're already switching to thinking about the things that help. It's so important to know what can help to foster our sleep. like making my bed to climb into so that it's like nice and cozy and welcoming. That's great. Lisa, can we move to the next slide, please? So one of the top tips about improving quality of sleep is to create a buffer zone to help yourself wind down. And I think this is really especially important in this time of so much screen time. The recommendation is to take even about an hour before you plan to go to bed. I would say if it doesn't feel doable to take an hour, what if you look at even half an hour or 20 minutes to give yourself some time to wind down from your busy day. So it's about taking some time to do something pleasant, enjoyable, or relaxing, some quiet time to promote rest and disengage from the busyness of the day. And ideally, it is a really good idea to unplug from devices. So turn off your computer and leave the devices in another room if possible. So we've got some suggestions there around ways that you can build in this buffer zone. And I really like to think of it as kind of like the adult version of bedtime when we were kids. You know, the bedtime routine exists because it helps to signal, okay, it's time to start slowing down. And all of those kind of gentle calming activities were built to help build a positive association with sleep. So, I see there's a heart for do low energy movement practice like restorative yoga. You can see, I think none of these require a screen, and that's very intentional. So thinking about things that you could do to help yourself to wind down. I see music and podcasts listed there. And maybe there's something that you like to do as a kind of a buffer zone activity that you'd like to add either in the chat or on the screen. So with students that I work with in individual counseling, when we're talking about sleep, pet cuddles, awesome. Get some oxytocin from the cuddles, the feel-good hormone. We talk about setting a time where, you know, this is when my work ends, and having like that symbolic closing of the computer, putting it away. I've even heard of a student putting a blanket over their workspace because it's in the same room where they sleep, and just really signaling to themselves, okay, that part of the day is done, and then taking some time for a comforting and smooth transition. So that's something I really encourage you to think about. We'll move on to the next slide, please, Lisa. So the challenge, the invitation really is to make sleep the immovable priority around which your work happens, to anchor it in, and really to know your gold standard. So to look at like what time do I need to wake up in the morning? And so then what time do I need to go to bed, or what time does my buffer zone start at, and work towards it. I want to be honest and reasonable around the fact that you are very much mid-semester right now, and it might not feel super easy to necessarily adhere to the gold standard every night, but you can have that in mind and take little steps to work towards it. And I've included some sort of boundary setting lines you can use either for yourself or for people in your life, such as all work has to end by this time. My buffer zone starts at whatever time you decide, or my bedtime is this time. And really just thinking about how you can honor those intentions for yourself. And I'd love to hear what people think about that. So if you have any comments, feel free to pop them in the chat. Is this something that you're already doing, or that you think might be helpful? Or does it feel completely out of reach? We'll move on to the next slide, Lisa. Great. And I try to do it, and my phone reminds me, yeah, our phones can be a great tool for that, to set reminders about bedtimes. It's a really good idea. Great. And I've included some resources for sleep here, and I think Lisa's going to pop them into the chat as well. The Doze app, if you are having any challenges with your sleep, it's really great. It was developed by a researcher at Ryerson University, and it will prompt you to add in information about your sleep patterns and then gradually give you some coaching around adjustments you could make. The 4-7-8 breath, where you inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8, is really said to be a great one for slowing down our bodies and preparing for sleep. I've alluded to my own challenges with falling asleep, and I really like the cognitive shuffle that's here. It was developed by a UBCO prof, and it's even been mentioned in Oprah magazine. So that's kind of cool, a local flavor. It mimics the, when you're falling asleep and your thoughts are kind of like floating in and out, like drifting from topic to topic. So it sort of mimics that behavior to foster the falling asleep. So you take a word, so you could choose sleep, for example, and then you would start to think about any words that come to mind that start with the first letter of that word. So S. So you might think to yourself, shoe, sit, sun, and just work through as many S words as you can think of, and then move on to L and do the same for as long as you can keep going. And then E, you might want to skip the second E since you've already done it. Often people find that they've fallen asleep before they reach the end of the words. So it's kind of an interesting one. And then Yoga Nidra is a very special or unique kind of yoga that is done lying down. It's kind of like a lying down meditation that's actually designed for you to actually fall asleep to. And a lot of people find that really helpful as well. So there's some resources if you're interested, and Lisa's put them in the chat.